Okay, today's chapter is chemical. Today's chapter is chemical bonding. Okay, now today we are going to study about the chemical changes that are taking place as well as the chemical bonding between the substances. Okay, so students, I hope we have studied about the physical change and chemical change in standard 7. So we have studied different types of changes and how does the changes takes place. There are different types of changes, that is physical change, chemical change, harmful change, useful change, periodic change, non-periodic change. Okay, so there are many different types of changes, but today in this chapter we are going to study about the chemical changes and the chemical bond between the substances. Now chemical changes means what? Now for example, if you cut an apple, after some time when you see the apple which is cut, you can see that it has turned into brownish black in color. Okay, so why this happens? Because there is some chemical reaction happened with that apple with the help of the air present in the surrounding. Even nails also, if the nails are kept in if the water is fall on the nails, what happens? They rust. Okay, so rusting is occurring on the nails. So this is called as chemical change. When the bread is roasted in the toast maker, that what happens, the bread is converted into toast. So this is the example of the chemical change. Even when the cake is baked, that is also a chemical example of the chemical change. So students, we have studied all these examples in standard 7th. Okay, so I would like to tell you that the chemical changes occurs due to change in the color, even the taste changes, and some gases also released from the substances when the changes occur. Okay, even you have the example of banana. After some days the banana becomes blackish in color, so that is also the chemical change that occurs in that substances. Okay, so now we will move forward in this lesson about the chemical changes and the word equation. So now there are some chemical changes which are described with the help of equations. So there are some equations that you have to balance that equations, and how that reaction takes place is because of the chemical changes that we are going to study in this lesson. Okay, so first of all, I would like to tell you that during chemical changes, the chemical composition of the organic matter changes and the new substances formed. Okay, when there is reaction between the two substances and the substance or the matter which changes forms a new different product is formed, and the product is also having some different properties. Even they have some different chemical compositions are also formed in that. Okay, now for example, here we will have some example. When the baking soda is added with lemon juice. Now lemon juice, everyone knows that in lemon juice which type of acid is present? Citric acid is present. When the citric and baking soda, so baking soda is made up of what? It is made up of sodium bicarbonate. Okay, when the citric acid and sodium carbonate react with each other, that time what is formed? Carbon dioxide is released and sodium citrate is formed. Sodium citrate is a salt. Okay, now here you can see there is one acid and one alkaline. So whenever there is reaction between acid and alkaline, the reaction is called as neutralization reaction, means it is neutral. This reaction, when it is taken between one acid and one alkyl, that time that this type of reaction is called as neutralization reaction. Okay, so this is about the chemical changes, and you have seen how the equation has taken place in this type. Okay, then what is respiration? Now let's see some chemical changes in our daily day-to-day life. There are very different chemical changes we have seen in our day-to-day life. So first is respiration, second is photosynthesis, which these are the two types of um, changes that are natural chemical changes. Okay, this is natural. Now respiration, what is respiration? Respiration means inhalation and exhalation of oxygen and carbon dioxide uh, and the water vapors from the nose. Okay, so what is respiration? We have studied this in our previous chapter only. Okay, after that, you know that now how you are going to represent this respiration in the equation form. So everyone knows whatever food we are taking, that food is converted into glucose. That food is converted into glucose. Okay, that food is converted into glucose. So glucose, what is the molecular formula of glucose? C6H12O6. That is the molecular formula for glucose. So when glucose is reacted with oxygen during respiration, what happens? Carbon dioxide plus water is formed, because when there is a reaction between glucose and oxygen, whatever air is inhaled, it comes out in the form of carbon dioxide and water. As you all know that we are breathing in oxygen, but when we are exhaling, that time carbon dioxide and water vapors are coming out along with the air. Okay, so now this glucose, when reacts with oxygen, that is O2, during respiration, then what happens? Carbon dioxide is formed along with water. Carbon dioxide means CO2 and water means H2O. Okay, so this is the reaction that takes place in respiration. So this chemical reaction is a natural chemical change that we have seen in our day-to-day life. Then the second is photosynthesis. As you know that the green plants prepare their own food with the help of sunlight. Just a second. During chemical changes, the chemical compositions, you have you as you know that the photosynthesis that takes place in presence of sunlight. The green plants prepare their food with the help of sunlight. So how does this reaction takes place? So what happens when the carbon dioxide reacts with water in presence of sunlight? That time glucose and oxygen is produced. Exactly the opposite thing of respiration is happening in photosynthesis. Okay, exactly the opposite thing happens in the photosynthesis of respiration. In respiration, what we have studied? We have studied that glucose plus oxygen. Okay, when glucose and oxygen reacts, what we get? We get carbon dioxide and water as the product. But here when carbon dioxide is reacted with water, that time in presence of sunlight, what reaction is produced? Glucose and oxygen. Okay, that is CO2 plus H2O in presence of sunlight. And green plants, you get glucose formation. What is the molecular formula for glucose? That is C6H12O6, and oxygen, that is O2. So these are the two reactions that is taking place naturally in our body. Okay, one example was respiration, and photosynthesis example is from the green plants. Okay, then next there are some man-made chemical changes. Now, what are the man-made chemical changes? First is combustion of fuel. Now, what is combustion of fuel? When whatever things such as wood, coal, petrol, or cooking gas, whenever you are burning, some amount of energy is released from that. Okay, so that energy is nothing but it burns the fuel such as carbon. So this fuel consists of carbon. So whenever there is combustion, what happens? The carbon reacts with oxygen to form carbon dioxide. Okay, how will you represent? Carbon means C, oxygen means O2, and when the reaction takes place, that time you can say that CO2. Okay, so in this combustion of fuel, what we have studied, that the combustion of fuel is very fast and it is irreversible chemical change. Again, one more type of change we have studied in 7th standard, that is irreversible change. Means it is not going reversible. From carbon dioxide, again you cannot create carbon or oxygen. Okay, once this reaction is completed, you cannot reverse this reaction, so it is called as irreversible chemical reaction. So whenever you are burning the fuel such as wood, coal, petrol, cooking gas, that time the energy which is generated or that burns is nothing but carbon. So with this carbon, when mixes with oxygen, it forms carbon dioxide. Okay, this is the first man-made chemical changes, that is combustion of fuels. Now second chemical change by man-made is the changes cleaning the shahbad tile with dilute hydrochloric acid. Now you know that hydrochloric acid is also used for cleaning tiles. Okay, so when you react, uh, when the hydrogen chloride is reacted with calcium chloride, what carbonate, what reaction takes place? Three products you get. Okay, you get three products with this reaction. Okay, the tiles are made up of calcium carbonate, and when the dilute hydrochloric acid is reacted with it, three products are formed. First product which you get is calcium chloride, second product is carbon dioxide, and third product is water. Okay, as you all know that these three products you are getting, so this is used for cleaning because it cleans all the dirt and washed away with the help of water. Okay, calcium is used for removing the dirt from the tiles. Okay, so when calcium carbonate is reacted with dilute hydrochloric acid, we get three products, that is calcium chloride, calcium carbon dioxide, as well as water. So this is the second use of man-made chemical changes. Let's move on. Let's see the third use, that is softening of hard water. Okay, softening of hard water means what? Now here you know water is of two types, hard water and soft water. Hard water, it is the water in which the washing soda does not dissolve properly. Okay, so the calcium chloride when reacts with sodium carbonate, what is formed? Calcium carbonate is formed and NaCl is formed. Okay, so calcium chloride, we have CaCl2, and sodium carbonate we have N2CO3, and calcium carbonate, the product which formed after chemical changes is calcium carbonate plus sodium chloride. Okay, this reaction can also be taken place with the help of magnesium. Instead of calcium, you can use also magnesium. So that time what will be the wherever the calcium initial is there, you have to change it with magnesium, that is Mg. So the reaction will be such as magnesium chloride plus sodium carbonate gives magnesium carbonate plus sodium chloride. So the reaction will be MgCl2 Na2CO3 and MgCO3 NaCl. Okay, instead of calcium, just you have to use Mg, that instead of magnesium. Instead of calcium, you have to change the word into magnesium, and you can balance this reaction. Okay, so these are the three man-made chemical changes that we have seen that are used by man for the chemical reaction for its own purposes. Okay, now let's move towards the chemical bond. Now, what is the chemical bond? The chemical bond provides energy to hold two different atoms together in the chemical compound. Now, the chemical compounds that are present in the atom, okay, electrons are present in the atom. Those electrons are supposed to be held with a different atoms. So these atoms, when are hold together with the help of chemical compound, those are called as chemical bonding. Students, we have studied this chemical bonds in the chapter number 5, that is inside the atom. Okay, in this lesson we have studied about the relationship between the electronic configuration and the valency of the elements. Means how there are how the electronic configuration is there, how the valency of the elements are there. So again, we are going to revise all this thing in this chapter. Okay. Again, one more thing I would like to tell you that in this chemical bonding, noble gases does not takes part. Now you will say, what are noble gases? Noble gases are also known as inert gases, and there are some inert gases such as argon, neon, xenon. So these are some of the noble gases that does not take part in chemical bonding. Okay. Now, I hope you have understood about what is chemical bonding. Now, why there is a need of chemical bonding? Because the electrons need strength, or they need to be bond, that depends upon the molecules on the atoms include in the process of bond formation. Whenever there is bond formation, there should be strength of the bonds, and this strength of the bonds depends upon the molecules or the atoms. Okay. So there is a chemical bonding. So why there is a bonding between bond formation? Because the bond formation makes the molecules or the atoms, gives the strength to the bonds. Okay. Let's move towards the next point. There are four types of chemical bonding, that is ionic bonds, covalent bonds, hydrogen bonds, and metallic bonds. So in your course, only ionic bonds and covalent bonds are there. Hydrogen bonds and metallic bonds are not there, but still I would like to give some information about it. So let's see about the ionic bonds. So what are ionic bonds? These ionic bonds are, they leave one electron from one atom, and that electron is entering into the another. Okay, so opposite charge of the ions now attract each other. There is attraction of losing the electron from one orbit, and there is attraction of the charge ion gaining from the another orbit. So let's make it more easy. Let's see some example. Here is sodium atom and chlorine atom. Okay, in sodium atom you can see there are some bonds. Okay, in the first orbit, how many electrons are there? 2 electrons are there. In the second orbit, how many electrons are there? There are 8 electrons. And in the third orbit, that is, how many electrons are there? That is 1 electron. So sodium is having 11 atomic number, and chlorine is having 17. Okay, chlorine is having 17 electronic electrons in the orbit. As you all know, the first shell is called as K, the second shell is called as L, and the third shell is called as M shell, and the fourth shell is called as N shell. Students, we have studied all these things in the chapter number 5. So the first shell, which is surrounding to the sodium, that is called as K shell. Then next to that is L shell. Then third shell is known as M shell, and fourth shell is known as N shell. Now, as you know that the sodium is having 11 electrons in the orbit. So if it loses one electron and it gives to the chlorine, then the chlorine will complete the whole orbit. Okay, because chlorine requires only one orbit to complete the shell. that is fourth shell, that is N shell. To complete the N shell, it will attract one ion from the sodium. Okay, what it will do, it will attract one ion from the sodium. So sodium will give one electron to chlorine to complete the N shell of the orbit. So now how much electronic configuration will the sodium have? The sodium will have 10 electrons in its orbit and the chlorine will have 18. Now by gaining one electron by the chlorine atom change into chloride ion. Okay, now who is the donor here? Sodium ion is the donor. So it has one electron has been donated, so it has become a cation. Sodium has become a cation, and chloride has attracted that atom, so it is called as ion. And even by gaining one chloride, one electron, it has become a chloride ion. Okay, now in this ionic bond, what we have studied? We have studied that the ions of the opposite charges are attracted to each other by electrostatic force. So there is some electrostatic force which is produced in these two types of ions, and what happens, the opposite charges get attracted to each other. So here from the sodium, the electron has been attracted by the chlorine. By which force? By electrostatic force. With the help of electrostatic force, this chlorine atom has changed into chloride ion. So when the sodium atom and the chlorine atom reacts with each other, that time sodium chloride is formed. Okay, that time sodium chloride is formed. I think you have understood very well with the help of orbits in this example. So next type of bond is covalent bond. Now this covalent bond is found in the mutual sharing of electrons between the two atoms. Now the atoms are mutually share in the electrons between the two atoms. So two atoms mutually share the electrons uh, in this bond. So this bond is known as covalent bond. This bond can further be divided into single covalent bond or a double covalent bond or triple covalent bond with respecting to the mutual sharing of one, two, or three bonds respectively. Means if their sharing is between two atoms, that time we will have that mutual sharing of one. If two different are there, that time two covalent bonds will be sharing the atoms and the electrons. Okay, let's move towards the example. So in the covalent example, we have taken two hydrogen atoms. Okay, now two hydrogen atom, that is H, is reacted with H. Then time what happens, they are mutually sharing the electrons from each other, and what product is formed? H2 product is formed. Now H2 is a form of hydrogen gas. When two hydrogen reacts with when two hydrogen atoms react with each other and they share the electrons with the mutual sharing, that time there is a formation of covalent bond between the two atoms. And what is formed? Hydrogen gas is formed after the formation of the covalent bond. Now this hydrogen molecule is the darker area between the two nuclei. Now here the hydrogen gas, you can see they are two orbits are merged into one orbit. Okay, and the darker part, you can see the darker part is the reaction that is taken between the two hydrogen atom, that is hydrogen gas is taking place in between them. And here the sharing is done mutually and most likely to be used. So the atoms are mutually sharing the electrons in them. Okay, so this is about the covalent bond. Then next, third type of bond is hydrogen bond. Now what is hydrogen bond? In this hydrogen bond, the attractive force between the hydrogen is attached to the electronegative atom of one molecule and electronegative atom of the different molecule. Means the hydrogen bond is attracted with the force of the hydrogen to the electronegative atom of one atom molecule and another atom. So there is two different um, bonding between the hydrogen is attached to the two different molecule as well as the atom of the different molecules. So let's see the example. Here hydrogen, which is having positive electron, whereas oxygen is having negative electron. So when hydrogen is having the hydrogen bonding, that time what happens? Each hydrogen is covalently bond with oxygen. Okay, here you can see that the oxygen is carrying two atoms of hydrogen. Okay, when the oxygen has two shared pairs of the electron, that time what happens? It gives one positive hydrogen electron to the hydrogen oxygen, to the negative atom. So this type of sharing is called as hydrogen bonding. So here we can see there are four pairs of electrons surrounding to the oxygen. But when there is a formation of hydrogen bond, the two unpaired and the opposite side of the oxygen atom is shared with the atom. So here oxygen is what? Oxygen is electronegative. And which atom it is compared to? It is compared to hydrogen. And hydrogen is electro positive. So here the negative atom gets attracted towards the positive electron. Okay, this is what is happening in the hydrogen bond. Then next is metallic bonding. Now metallic bonding is found in the metallic elements. Okay, where this is found, this takes place in only metallic elements. Here what happens? The electrostatic force of attraction between the positive ions and decollized other electrons. Means this positive charge ions, they are shuffling the other electrons. So metallic bonding refers the interaction between the decollized electrons and the metal nuclei. So let's try to understand what happens in the metallic bonds. Now here you can see the electrons which are decollized electrons. So the red color dot, that is the decollized electrolyzed electrons, and the positive electron is the metal ions. Okay, as the metal cations and the electrons are positively charged, so at positive and negative, they are oppositely charged. So when there is attraction between each other, what happens? The metal cations takes place and the formation of metallic bonds are taking place. And what happens in this reaction? They hold the particles together in metal. So